combination. Cooney is staggered. Foreman going after him. Overhand right, and down goes Cooney. Holyfield going after him now. A right to the jaw stuns him. He's on Queer Street. An overhand right, and down goes Rodriguez. A looping overhand right, flush on the jaw. The fight is over.
On Friday, April 19th, two giants of the boxing world will step into the ring at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City to answer a question. Can youth dominate wisdom? In one corner will be Evander Holyfield. He's the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Never has there been a better conditioned fighter. With a record of 25-0, he's proven that he's got what it takes to stand toe-to-toe with anyone.
Holyfield with a left and right combination, another combination. Back he goes against the ropes. He's helpless now, and Holyfield after him, and the fight is stopped.
In the other corner stands Big George Foreman, Olympic champion, former world heavyweight champion, the hard-pounding preacher who's knocked out 65 men. Could he be on the verge of the greatest comeback in ring history?
I didn't come back for the Cadillac in the window, one big payday. I came back to be heavyweight champ of the world.
We'll answer that question. Hear from the boxing press, celebrities, and visit with the fighters when Prime Network takes you down the road to the battle of the ages. Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. We'll be right back.
The heavyweight title isn't going anywhere. It's standing right here around my young 32-inch waist.
Evander Holyfield. Here's for the senior citizen crowd. When I take that belt, it's going right here around my bicep.
George Foreman. April 19th, live from Trump Plaza, TVKO presents the Heavyweight Championship on pay-per-view.
Evander, do the Bartman on the old geezer.
Oh, brother, JoJo pulverized the kid.
Live on pay-per-view. Call your cable operator now.
But I have never seen press like this. It's unbelievable.
Amidst possibly the greatest promotion for a heavyweight fight in the modern history of the ring, the two combatants, Foreman and Holyfield, have set out traversing the continent. In cities from coast to coast, it seemed wherever these two men go, they attract fans like magnets. George Foreman is a scribe's dream come true, never at a loss for words. His years at the pulpit have served him well.
This is going to be no doubt one of the greatest fights of all time. Almost like the eighth wonder of the world. To see a man step out of darkness after 10 years, not even putting on a pair of boxing gloves. I never even shadow boxed for 10 years. Bob Arum is going to bet that I win. I heard the odds are like 4-1 for Evander Holyfield. You've heard the old saying, a fool and his money are soon parted? There's another saying, Bob Arum and his money never part.
The champion, Evander Holyfield, the quieter of the two, perhaps is waiting for April 19th to let his performance speak for him. But in his own quiet and dignified way, he lands a few shots.
There's no doubt in my mind that when it comes time to fight time, I respect George, but I feel just as I feel about any other opponent. As my brother climbs up in the ring, you have to watch out, because I'll take him out just as well as you. It don't make any difference.
You've been around Lou Duke for too long, man.
As the press scrambles to take their best shot, the fighters' respective handlers take some shots of their own.
I can't wait to see the fight, myself. But of course, George, I would hope that I don't trip this time here. I jumped over Douglas, and I almost got a hernia. You're a little bigger, so I hope that nothing happens. Maybe I have to go around you when you're laying on the floor. But it's going to be a great fight. We're going to have a lot of fun. But rest assured one thing. There's going to be one winner, Evander, real deal, Holyfield. Thank you.
And I tell you here right now that there will be a new heavyweight champion in April, on April 19th, and that will be George Foreman, because George Foreman is the hardest hitting heavyweight of all times. And he is a better fighter now than he was back in 73 and 1974.
Wait a
Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman has captured the imagination of the entire country. And recently, during the largest sports trade show in the country, the Atlanta Super Show, some sports superstars offered their opinion on how they see the fight.
I've seen George come along. I know George. I know how determined he is, and he's a big, strong guy. And if Holyfield could stay away from getting one serious blow from George, then he very well should be able to win the fight. But I wouldn't count out the possibility of George coming out victorious.
I think it's going to be a good fight, a lot better than a lot of people are going to think. But I think Evander's probably going to win.
I got to go to Little Man.
I'm a little man myself, and everybody always knocking the odds about the little people, so I have to go with Holyfield.
Since I'm over 40, my heart lies with George Foreman. I would love to see him pull it off.
When Holyfield took the title, I think that he fought one of the best fights of his career. He's earned the position where he is, but you know, for Foreman to come back at his age and to fight the fighters that he has to get to this position is due credit to him. Now, whether he can pull it off in the title fight, I don't know. I think that's why everybody's going to show up to see how he handles the champ. And you know, if he gets in there and uses all his experience and his wisdom, then it'd be kind of an interesting fight.
I like George Foreman's hairstyle and his age, but I'm going to go with youth, and I think Evander's ready for this one. I think he's going to win it.
Good luck, George. I'm with you.
Evander Holyfield's going to win, and this is why. In about the 4th round, Evander's going to take a biscuit out of his shorts. He's going to throw the biscuit to the right, and Foreman's going to look at it to try to eat it, of course, and he's going to give him an uppercut. Foreman's going to go down. Evander Holyfield's going to win the fight in, let's say, 4 or 5 rounds, whenever he can get the biscuit out. Evander Holyfield will win the fight.
We'll be right back with a look at challenger George Foreman when Prime Network's Road to the Battle of the Ages continues. Prime Network's Road to the Battle of the Ages. Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. George Foreman is a giant of a man, standing 6 feet 4 inches tall. He's expected to enter the ring somewhere between 240 and 260 pounds. His awesome power has helped him compile a record of 24-0 on the comeback trail with 23 KOs. He's got the highest knockout ratio of any fighter in heavyweight history.
George's biggest strength, obviously, is his power and his experience and the certain aura he brings into the ring.
He's a heavy-handed puncher. I don't care if he's 60 years old, he can still whack you.
If you ever doubted Foreman's power, take a look at what he did to Jerry Cooney.
Cooney is staggered. Foreman going after him. Overhand right, and down goes Cooney. Here comes Foreman. A left uppercut to the jaw, and down goes Cooney again with a right cross to the jaw, and the fight is over.
Training in his own facility, which doubles as his community youth center in Houston, Texas, under the watchful eye of legendary Archie Moore, Foreman hones his skills. He knows the task he faces, his strengths and weaknesses, and what it's going to take to capture the belt.
In these comeback fights, definitely I'm the same man 10 years, 15 years later who fought for the heavyweight championship of the world in Zaire, Africa. I've had to change a lot of things because, of course, I didn't have the same stamina that I would have had if I had been active throughout my boxing years. The 10 years that I was out, I gained a lot of weight, so I had to gain some wisdom along with the weight.
He knows what he can't do, so he doesn't try to do it either. He'll do what he does best, and that is hit, and it only takes one punch from either hand.
I think he's a completely different fighter. He's a lot craftier, does not waste his assets early in the fight. He learned that from Ali after punching on Ali for 8 rounds and then was knocked out. And I think he's a lot smarter fighter than he was back then.
Foreman knows his age, wisdom, and experience are assets he must depend on. He realizes that the younger, quicker Holyfield will be coming at him with an incredible arsenal. In other words, this old dog has had to learn a few tricks.
I've got a great defense now. Not only can I hit you, but it's hard to hit George Foreman. So I've been able, with the help of Archie Moore, to add, in addition to my great power, a great defense.
Well, George Foreman, ironically, is probably a better fighter, a better boxer than he was years ago when he won the heavyweight championship. He has a much better jab. He didn't have a jab. If he'd had a jab when he fought Muhammad Ali, he probably would have won that fight.
I think that George Foreman has a lot of command of the ring, and he does pack a powerful wallop. He can put combinations together. His hand speed is a little quicker than people give him credit for at his advanced age.
Foreman's remarkable comeback has piqued the imagination of middle-aged America. Some liken it to a crusade. Others see it as a skillful manipulation of the media. Call it what you will, but he's managed to land that now familiar smiling face into every living room in this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is George Foreman. George!
He's left no stone unturned, whether it's jabbing into the night with late night's David Letterman, answering questions tossed out by Bob Costas.
How old are you?
39.
No! You're at least 42.
Or sharing a Hollywood stage with Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal. Foreman is a man on a mission with a message.
There are a lot of people over 40 who are pulling for me. In actuality, they're pulling for themselves. I've got to be successful to show them that if you're 40 and above 40, they can use the word potential. And in the end, that's what it's all about.
At age 43, George Foreman knows that on April 19th, when he enters that ring against Evander Holyfield, he's landed himself in what could be the biggest pay-per-view event in history. Coming up next, a look at heavyweight champion of the world Evander Holyfield when Prime Network continues with the road to the Battle of the Ages. But first, some advice from the press.
George Foreman needs to jab, and he has a very good jab that's really overlooked, and he needs to whack him. But Holyfield has to be there for him to whack him.
I think if Holyfield is smart, he will stay, at least in the early going, far away from George. The longer the fight goes, the better Holyfield's chances.
I think what Holyfield did against Douglas will work very well against Foreman. I think he needs to keep out of his range and pick his spots on when he's going to go in underneath, hit him good, get out, come back in, hit him good, get out.
Road to the Battle of the Ages. Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. Evander Holyfield, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. He's considered the most conditioned fighter in the heavyweight division. His multifaceted training method, which has been dubbed the Omega Project, seems more suited for a Hollywood movie than for a sport where going out back and chopping wood is common practice. He's guided by a team directed by co-trainers Lou Duva and George Benton.
We put a strength coach on him. We put a weight coach on him. We put the correct ingredients. I mean, George Benton, he's the professor. He takes care of boxing. I mean, we've got Maria that takes care of his muscle tone. You take Chaz will take care of his weight. He'll take care of Tim will take care of mobility and cardiovascular work. So we put all that together with George. That's on the strength factor. On the boxing, George Benton and I will take over, and we'll go on the boxing. But they prepare him, Evander, for us.
I think his training methods have been right on the money so far. He, again, he's 8-0 with 8 knockouts as a heavyweight, and all he does, they leave nothing to chance. His camp, they bring in ballet teachers, strength coaches, conditioning coaches. They have computers in the camp, tracking his punching. I think his training's been right on the money.
Holyfield, who's come up through the ranks in the lighter weight classes, has had to endure some criticism, painting him as a blown-up cruiserweight. But the experts agree that's not so. He really is the real deal.
I think that Evander Holyfield has done the right thing because he hasn't gone up to 220 or 230. His frame can handle the weight that he's got on it, and it was a fairly gradual process of going up from cruiserweight up to heavyweight.
Well, Evander was a pretty scrawny guy as a cruiserweight. And they started the process after he'd had about 15 fights, and they gradually built him up. And I don't think it's false weight. I think he's a good, solid 210-pounder. Certainly not like Michael Spinks, who's now back down to 190 when he's not fighting. That was basically mega vitamins and a lot of intensive weight training. I think Evander has a little bit of probably extra weight that's not real, but he's a pretty solid guy, and I think that's one of his assets is his physique.
Holyfield knows he'll have to call on all of this preparation on the night of April 19th when he steps into that ring with George Foreman.
We got a George Foreman in front of us now. We got a big guy that can punch, strong, so we have to learn how to handle that.
You know, I look for Evander to win and win pretty good. But it's a dangerous fight. The reason it's dangerous is because this guy's a big guy. He's a guy that can take you out with either hand. He's a guy that's what we call a winger. He's going to come in and throw shots all over the place.
Nobody knows for sure what will happen the night of the fight, but one thing we can be sure of. If guts, determination, and preparation account for anything, Holyfield is ready to go.
I feel that George feel that he can win. I feel that he thinks he can win, and it's my job to go out there and convince him that he cannot win.
We'll be right back with a look at some previous fights when Prime Network's Road to the Battle of the Ages, Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman, continues. But first, some more advice from the press.
Try and drive him to the ropes, bang him to the body, where I don't think Holyfield is very strong. And also try and sneak in some uppercuts early to get Holyfield's attention, because Holyfield does get hit with uppercuts.
Evander Holyfield, he wants to show us some of the newfound movement that we saw against Douglas and use it even a little bit more and take Foreman into the 5th or 6th round.
Network's Road to the Battle of the Ages, Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. On their way to the heavyweight championship of the world, Lou Duva and George Benton have done a remarkable job guiding Holyfield through 25 carefully selected opponents. One of those opponents was a very tough and highly regarded Dwight Muhammad Qawi. At the time, Qawi was the WBA junior heavyweight champion of the world. Many in the boxing community thought this was a mistake, pairing Holyfield so early in his career with the formidable veteran. Through 15 unbelievable rounds, Holyfield and Qawi banged on each other and had the crowd in Atlanta on its feet. When it was all over, Holyfield not only had the WBA junior heavyweight title, but the respect of anybody in the boxing community who ever doubted that this champion was destined for greatness.
The first Qawi fight versus Evander Holyfield at cruiserweight was one of the best 3 fights I've ever seen. That was in Atlanta. And Evander was a very raw kid. I think only had 12 fights under his belt. And after the fight, he had to go to the hospital because of dehydration. But it was a war, and Evander stood in there and showed that he was really a game fighter. I think he's developed his skills a little bit since then.
One of the greatest performances in terms of courage that I've seen in a long, long time.
I think the bout with Dwight Muhammad Qawi, in anyone else's career, would have been the high watermark. It was an amazing bout. It was one of the great fights of all time. And he and Qawi had what I think was the best bout in terms of excitement that you could possibly ever see. And some would look at it and say, oh, but look, that created such a tough time with the cruiserweight. Well, he was a cruiserweight then. Dwight Muhammad Qawi was a terrific fighter at that time and was a champion. And I think for Holyfield to go the distance with him, get through what Qawi tossed at him, was extraordinary.
George Foreman's comeback has been remarkable. Chalking up win after win, he's managed to go 24-0 with 23 knockouts. One of the most stunning came in Atlantic City before a packed house. The opponent, hard-pounding Jerry Cooney, known as one of the heaviest punchers in heavyweight history. Although Cooney rocked Foreman early, Big George was able to shake it off and come back with an incredible display of punching power.
Foreman advancing, a left hook to the jaw, a beauty, a left and right combination. Cooney is staggered, Foreman going after him, overhand right, and down goes Cooney.
George showed 2 things. One, he could be hit by a left hook and withstand it. And 2, he was deadly accurate in his punches, especially in the second round. He was about as efficient as any fighter I think I've ever seen in delivering heavy blows in a short period of time in the Cooney fight. So that's where he got legitimate in his comeback.
His finishing combination on Cooney was a 5-punch combination. Every punch landed. I haven't seen Tyson or Holyfield land a combination like that in quite a while.
That was the fight where George got his public credibility, so to speak.
We started to see from George Foreman straighter punches and the skills that he now has. And so the Cooney fight, to me, even though I'm not putting Jerry Cooney up on a high pedestal because of his problems, but he is a good heavyweight puncher, that was the fight in which we really saw George Foreman reach another plateau.
In what many people considered his toughest test today, Foreman climbed in the ring with top 10 contender Adelson Rodriguez. Foreman, having been criticized for taking on some cruiserweights and junior heavyweights, wanted to prove once and for all that he had what it takes to get in there with a quality heavyweight opponent. This fight served up notice that George Foreman was ready for a shot at the title.
Foreman twice coming up and under with the left hand. And remember, when you're watching George Foreman, you're watching a man who has been known to knock opponents out with glancing blows. His hands are so heavy that what becomes a knockout punch doesn't always look like one, and Rodriguez goes down.
We'll be right back with press comments on how they see the fight unfolding and who they predict will win when Prime Network's road to the Battle of the Ages continues. Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman. Experts agree that styles make fights. This one may make history. Well, Holyfield and Foreman could not differ more. The experts do agree that Holyfield must stay away from Foreman early on and hope that Foreman may tire out. Foreman's job is to go after Holyfield and get close enough to land his powerful combinations.
We're going to see Evander Holyfield try and box more even than we saw in the Douglas fight. I think we're going to see him really become a boxer for the first time in his career, and do it especially for the first 6, 7, maybe even 8 rounds. He might do it, and then we're going to see him really go after George Foreman with combinations and trying to knock him out. And I think we're going to see Foreman attempting to cut the ring off on Holyfield, even a little surprised maybe at the movement that Holyfield gives him early in the fight. And if Foreman can get to him early, he might do the job.
I see George looking to take Evander out with a big shot. Hopefully that Evander's going to come to George, and that's how George has always fought his best. Joe Frazier, you know, he destroyed because Joe was a guy who would just move in straight in on you. And I think Evander's going to be a little bit cautious at first, try and box him, and I think he'll probably go to the body and then go up to the head.
I think George has to make the pace to start the fight, because as I indicated earlier, the longer the fight goes, the worse his chances. So I think he has to press the issue. He has to come right after Holyfield. On the other hand, I think Holyfield has to jab, to stay away from both hands of Foreman, and to make this fight a war of attrition.
It's anyone's guess who will come out victorious on the night of April 19th. Holyfield's got youth, conditioning, and speed. Foreman's got power and wisdom, and the press has its opinion.
I think Holyfield's going to win it by a knockout in about 7 or 8. I think that what he just has to do is to wear George down. I think if he fights a foolish fight and decides that he's going to try and outslug the old man, he could very well get knocked out, because nobody has ever outpunched George Foreman. The only guys who have beaten George Foreman are guys who outboxed him, got him exhausted, and then knocked him out. But nobody outslugs George Foreman. So if Holyfield tries to outslug him, he's going to lose the fight.
Foreman has that classic puncher's chance. Whenever you get a slugger in there in a heavyweight championship fight, one punch can end it at any moment, at any time. George Foreman has that ability. But I still believe that a 27-year-old machine-like fighter like Evander Holyfield will be too quick, too fast, and have too much speed for George Foreman.
I think it will be a very, very interesting, exciting heavyweight fight. As I said, logic tells me Holyfield, but there's something that says George Foreman could do it.
It's an interesting fight. After all, Foreman is 10 years retired. He has the highest knockout ratio of any champion in heavyweight history. The way he leaves people on the canvas, and Holyfield, the up-and-coming heavyweight champion. It's an interesting matchup.
Being old myself, I'd like to see George win, and I think a lot of old geezers out there would. But I think, so your heart probably says George, but your head has to say the younger, better conditioned man. So if the fight is over with in the first or second or third rounds, then I like George Foreman's chances very much. If it goes into the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th rounds, which I think it probably will, then I like Holyfield's chances.
One thing is for sure, when Holyfield and Foreman enter the ring the night of the 19th, the sellout crowd, the millions watching in their homes on pay-per-view, closed-circuit theaters, and various other outlets around the world will be seeing a spectacle not soon to be forgotten. Holyfield making his first title defense, and Big George Foreman giving it all he's got to climb back up to the top of the mountain where he once stood. Thank you for joining Prime Network for Road to the Battle of the Ages, Evander Holyfield versus George Foreman.
Press conferences, but the one item that will continue until Friday night is the hype surrounding the Battle of the Ages between Evander Holyfield and George Foreman. Charlie Steiner has our coverage from Atlantic City.
Thank you and welcome to the Trump Plaza, and once again greetings from Atlantic City with roughly 48 hours to go before what they have dubbed the Battle of the Ages. Heavyweight champion of the world Evander Holyfield staged his final public workout today, sparring 4 occasionally spirited rounds. Tomorrow, Holyfield may exercise and stretch a little bit, but realistically, the next time he throws a punch with any venom at all will be Friday night next door at the Convention Center at and against George Foreman. Meanwhile, the 42-year-old challenger sparred this afternoon, but his workout, now that veteran trainer Angelo Dundee has joined Archie Moore in the corner, was closed to the public. At midday today, Holyfield and Foreman staged their final pre-fight news conference, which seemed to be more of a mutual admiration society than anything else. And as usual, it was Evander Holyfield who was no frills in his comments at the podium.
I'm grateful to be able to give George an opportunity. I feel that everybody should get an opportunity to reach their goal. I'd like to say that I'm in shape and I'm ready to fight.
And as usual, it was George Foreman who provided the theatrics.
He was born so I could get my opportunity to become champion of the world. Mike Tyson, I couldn't get it from him. He wouldn't box me. Buster Douglas didn't want to talk to me. Someone had to come along who would give me a chance. Lou Duva and his team are going to give me the opportunity, and I'm going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. Nobody can stop me.
Evander Holyfield has been the straight man in this promotion from day one, but he's been comfortable in that role, as comfortable as he's become with his role as heavyweight champion of the world.
You know, I'm a sports fan, and what people don't realize that I was there when I wasn't a champ, but it didn't make a difference. Now that I'm a champ, it do make a difference.
Does it ever? He's still a sports fan, but now when he goes to a ball game, everybody knows it. Whether he's in attendance for his hometown Hawks or is the honorary captain for his favorite football team, the Falcons, Evander Holyfield sure has come a long way. A half a life ago, the 28-year-old Holyfield sold peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jack at Fulton County Stadium.
I remember, you know, it's just like yesterday, me giving Ken Griffin a bag of peanuts in the dugout, and he gave me a ball. And now his guys, well, you know, I really like that Holyfield, but sometimes I just want to do this guy. Remember, I gave him a bag of peanuts.
That irony isn't lost on Holyfield, but what has been lost has been some spare time. How much time is your own anymore?
Well, it's hard to say, because sometimes I feel like my whole day is somebody else, because people always want it. And, you know, I try to be strong enough to break it up and have time for myself.
Since becoming the boxing king, Holyfield has become a salesman for Burger King. But the chief salesman for Friday night's fight is George Foreman, and Holyfield is the first one to admit that. It didn't take long for him to realize that either. In fact, within a half hour of winning the title, Holyfield was on the air with his next opponent.
Man, I'm going to go to Baskin Robbins, and I'm going to eat every flavor ice cream in the world. And then when you start pushing and shoving me, you're going to have to push and shove a whole franchise. No way you can get me. I weigh more than you. My foot weigh more than you.
He always going to outshine me and talking, because he's a man that's good with the words, and he's very colorful.
So you're okay with that?
I'm okay, because I know when it comes down to it, he's going to have to prove it.
It seems as if Holyfield's career has always been shortchanged, whether it was his disqualification in the '84 Olympics in Los Angeles, or as a cruiserweight champion, which is basically boxing's answer to being vice president, or accusations that he isn't a true heavyweight. Evander Holyfield is comfortable with all of the above. After all, he is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
The best part of it is just the respect that you get from people, and things that you said means a lot. And people don't brush you off. At least they gonna hear you out like that, and, you know, and I like that.
Evander Holyfield, who will weigh in tomorrow night on our 7 o'clock Eastern Time edition of SportsCenter Live, along with challenger George Foreman. And the two of them will be joining us on a special 1-hour edition of SportsCenter beginning at about 11 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow night. For now, I'm Charlie Steiner at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, and let's go back to SportsCenter.
Thank you, Charlie. This fight has come under a lot of scrutiny, people criticizing it. Is it worth watching? Will it make a mockery of the sport? But it's expected to generate $60 million in pay-per-view sales, so people want to watch it. So what's wrong with it?
Well, $35 coming from me. Come on over, bring the wife, we'll watch it. We'll talk.
Welcome back. It is T-minus 2 days and counting before the battle is joined in Atlantic City. Evander Holyfield and George Foreman. The battle of the ages, they're calling this one, but first things first, of course. Before they step into the ring, they have to step onto the scales. For that, we turn to our ringmaster, if you will, Charlie Steiner, live in Atlantic City. Charles?
Thank you, Bill, and greetings from Atlantic City. 48 hours from now, of course, it is Holyfield and Foreman. And in just a minute or so from now, Holyfield and Foreman will step on the scale. And joining me, ESPN boxing analyst Sugar Ray Leonard. Last time we were together in Las Vegas, The Holyfield-Douglas weigh-in was really the story of the entire event. What can we expect tonight?
Well, not the same thing we expected from the Douglas fight, because Buster Douglas, his weight was the issue. You know, Charlie, here, people gravitate towards George Foreman because they live vicariously through him. They see themselves in George Foreman, so George Foreman is George Foreman here.
And we're going to find out what George Foreman is going to weigh and Evander Holyfield is going to weigh as we turn our attention to the stage. Al Bernstein standing by. Al?
Welcome, everyone, to Trump Plaza and the weigh-in for the Battle of the Ages. Evander Holyfield defending his title against George Foreman. First to weigh in, the world heavyweight champion, Evander Holyfield.
Not yet, George.
Sure.
Evander Holyfield, 208 pounds.
And now the former heavyweight champion of the world and challenger, George Foreman.
On your way out. You gotta be on 50, 250. You gotta put it on 250.
Gotta get a bigger scale.
George Foreman, 257 pounds.
So George Foreman weighs in at 257, and Evander Holyfield comes in at 208. And we'll have a chance now to get a few comments from Evander. Evander, you come in at a weight that is very comparable to what you normally weigh. Do you feel comfortable at that? A little lighter, a couple pounds lighter than some thought you might. Does that have anything to do with wanting more speed for this bout?
Well, not at all. I'm in shape and I feel good, and 208 is the weight, and I'm going out to give my best performance.
Did you give any thought at all to being any heavier or any lighter? Is this right where you want to be?
Well, don't make any difference. The fight is not in the weight. The fight is an individual.
All right, that's for sure. Good luck. Evander Holyfield. And now George Foreman. George, you came in a little bit heavier than some thought you might. Was that right in where you thought you'd be?
I thought I'd be about 265, to be honest with you. I don't know how I got down like that. I just don't know.
That's what I meant. Lighter than you thought. That's what I meant to say.
I'm a little lighter than I thought I would. I thought it'd be about 265. Shame on me.
A few too many burgers, huh?
No, I got to eat it up now. I haven't had dinner.
Okay.
Revenge on the restaurant now.
Okay, good luck. George Foreman in a little heavier than some thought, and Evander Holyfield right in there at 208. Let's go back to Charlie.
All right, Al, 257 to 208 pounds. That is a 49-pound weight disparity as we take a look at the tail of the tape. And we tell you the weight disparity for this reason. It is the 6th largest weight disparity in heavyweight championship history. 257 to 208 pounds, a 14-year age difference, about an inch-and-a-half height difference, the reach difference only about an inch-and-a-half. A weighty issue indeed for George Foreman, as he has, during his comeback, ranged between 263 and 253 pounds, and tonight pretty much right in the middle of his last 5 fights. In the 24 previous fights during his comeback, he has ranged from 235 all the way up to 267 pounds. There they are. This has been, this entire week, a love-in. There has been no acrimony between the two fighters or the two camps. It has been a most unusual promotion, right?
Well, normally two guys who are about to undertake a major venture, they don't normally get together. You don't see that kind of camaraderie. And with George and Holyfield, there's a great deal of respect for each other. And you see that. It comes out.
In fact, tonight on our 11 o'clock edition of SportsCenter, they're going to be with us together. And that almost never happens 48 hours before a fight.
That is such a rarity. In fact, I don't like getting with my guys or my opposition, but George and Holyfield, they're an exception to the rule.
All right, let's talk about the weights. A weighty issue or not? 208 to 257, how does that play a role come Friday night?
Well, you know, Charlie, I always felt that the lighter George Foreman comes in at, he's a lot faster and more accurate. But apparently he feels very comfortable at this particular weight. And the way I see it, the only way George can be effective is to fight his fight, to pretty much make Holyfield get into an exchange. That's when George Foreman has a chance.
A curious factor in that when I was in Marshall just 2 weeks ago, George was about 242 or 43 pounds. He was not comfortable that light. He wanted to put on weight.
George is one of the few heavyweights that can make that claim, and people believe it. Other guys say, well, this is protection. I don't believe that. But with George Foreman, when he says he's gained weight to protect himself, to outpower his opponents, I honestly believe that.
Will he use his weight and his bulk to just lean on Holyfield all night and make Holyfield work that much harder?
Well, to try to create a scenario, Charlie. I mean, if George can't outbox Holyfield, he's not faster than Holyfield. So his best bet is to try to outmuscle Evander Holyfield, make Evander Holyfield fight his fight, which is inside. Not close now, again, because inside, I think Evander will be far more effective inside because his arms are shorter, and he's much more of an accurate puncher. But outside, and then rushing in, George Foreman has a chance that way.
Tonight on the 11 o'clock expanded 1-hour edition of SportsCenter, as we mentioned, Evander Holyfield and George Foreman will appear with us together. And we will have plenty more fight coverage from Atlantic City tonight on the 11 o'clock edition of SportsCenter, an expanded 1-hour edition. For now, let's go back to SportsCenter. Bill Patrick standing by. Bill?
Yes, they call it the Battle of the Ages Friday night in Atlantic City. Or is it the Battle of the Burgers, as George Foreman would have you believe? Whatever you call it, it is a heavyweight title fight with the undisputed champion facing a former legend trying to become a current one. Charlie Steiner reports from the Jersey Shore.
Thank you, and greetings from Atlantic City, where on this 48 hours prior to the Holyfield-Foreman fight, the heavyweight champion of the world, Evander Holyfield, did not work out today, while George Foreman sparred 4 reasonable rounds, nothing terribly out of the ordinary one way or the other. And then at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, live here on ESPN, the weigh-in. The heavyweight champion of the world, Evander Holyfield, was first to step on the scales, and his weight turned out to be exactly what it was 6 months ago against Buster Douglas.
Evander Holyfield, 208 pounds.
I'm in shape and I feel good, and 208 is the weight, and I'm going out to give my best performance.
And then it was big George Foreman's turn to step on the scale, and we do mean big.
George Foreman, 257 pounds.
I thought I'd be about 265, to be honest with you. I don't know how I got down like that. I just don't know.
That's what I meant. Lighter than you thought. That's what I meant to say.
I'm a little lighter than I thought I would. I thought it'd be about 265. Shame on me.
So George Foreman has a 49-pound weight advantage and a 14-year age disadvantage going into Friday night's fight. And as far as Foreman and his comeback is concerned, a weighty issue indeed. In his last 5 fights leading into this one, his weight has ranged between 253 and 263 pounds. And as the fates would have it, the weigh-in today, he weighed in right there in the middle at 257. A couple of ESPN boxing analysts joining us now. Sugar Ray Leonard, you know him, and of course you know Al Bernstein. And one of the things that we learned, or did not learn as the case may be, in the Buster Douglas fight was how not to use your weight advantage. What is George Foreman going to do to use that weight advantage?
Well, for George Foreman, who's been successful up until this point here, he's been able to utilize that extra luggage, I would call it. I think George Foreman is a better technician than he was as a young man. He utilized a jab, which he never had before, and his defense has been a lot tighter now.
you expect him to lean on Holyfield Friday night?
Yeah, I think he will if he gets the chance. And again, this feeds into whether Evander Holyfield will use this occasion to show his newfound movement. I think one of the things that struck me was watching the two men on the stage. Size-wise, I got the same feeling I did when I saw Ray fight Marvin Hagler. When they stepped up for that weigh-in, I looked at him and I said, hey, guess what? Marvin Hagler's not a monster compared to him. And I got the same feeling about Foreman. He didn't look like a monster next to Evander Holyfield.
So that's going to do it from Atlantic City. We'll see you again on Friday night. For Ray Leonard and Al Bernstein, I'm Charlie Steiner. Let's go back to Sports Center and Ann and Tom.
Body.
Well, don't you get jealous when you see this guy's body?
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. What do you guys do? What is the regimen? You're not training the day before a fight. What are you going to do this last 24 hours?
Well, actually, I'm just going to rest and pretty much kick back and look at the movie and catch the show here.
Yeah? Is there a strategy? Is there, for example, Muhammad Ali would name the round when it was going to happen. Can you do that, Evander?
Well, actually, I'm not Muhammad Ali. I'm Evander. I don't get into naming the round. I can say I win.
Yeah? Well, come on.
That's what we're looking for him to do.
You're going to obviously wear him down, though. That's got to be the strategy right now. I mean, his stamina and everything is something that's in your mind.
Well, my game plan is to go out and use my jab like I usually do and make mistakes and try to capitalize on the mistake. And I feel that the fight pretty much ends whenever round he makes mistakes.
Mm-hmm. I got a little shot of George Foreman's training that we had that he's been doing every single day. We're going to run just a little bit of that, just a couple of seconds of what he's been doing. He's been getting ready for you. He's been focused. Everything's been going on. Just a little bit of this. Foreman's training. He turns. He's been stretching. He's working on his reach. He's been doing some pull-ups. And then a ham thrust. There it is. That is. Now, speaking of training, Evander, now we talked to you last time, and you and Lou got into it. What is sex life like for a boxer as you've gone from February to now? We said we're going to check back with you on this. What has it been like? I mean, the chicks have to be all over you. The women have to know what you're making. Have you been abstaining?
Well, actually, I just been training is staying in my room, keeping away from everything.
Now, Lou, that's not what you said.
He does the training, Rick. I do the abstaining.
Now, the odds are 3.5 to 1 for you. Can you knock him out? That's the big question everybody has.
Sure, I can. I look at it like this: if Joy make a lot of mistakes, then I'm gonna be right there to capitalize on it. I feel that on a wave that I don't, because he's a better fighter than I predict him to be.
Right. We all thought that by now there would be a Tyson fight. What is the situation? Let's assume you knock out George Foreman. Let's say you move on to the next level. Will the next level be the Mike Tyson fight?
I hope so. I think right now the only reason why we're not getting it on because of Don King. I think Don King, I really don't want to accept the challenge right now at this time. For what reason, I really don't know.
Well, if we find out, we'll let you know, because I know Don. We've had him here, so it's just something that everybody's going to have to figure out. I was talking to Lou Duva earlier today, Bob Arum. I know that you guys know that you sell out everything. I mean, you've got a soft drink sponsor on your jacket there. The only thing I could get that wasn't sponsored, a Japanese group of businessmen has bought the rights to George Foreman's head. They're going to be having an ad on top of that. The only thing that I could find that wasn't sold was the bottom of the soles of your shoes, and all day I've been negotiating with Lou Duva. Lou, what do you think? Is there a possibility now?
Oh, sure there's a possibility, but I would think that you would get better coverage with George Foreman's shoes, because he's got a size 15, Evander only got a size 12, and when he knocks out Foreman, he's going to be laying there, and they're going to have a lot to read. You can put a whole story on his shoes.
This is what we wanted.
And probably the end of it you can put on top of his head, you know?
We wanted this, you see, and certainly there's no chance this is going to happen to you, Evander, but just in case you tripped or anything like that, this is what the world would see. This is the only thing left that hasn't been sold. So if you would at least consider it,
This is your last interview prior to the fight. Is there anything you want to get off your mind? Anything you want to say to everybody?
Not really. The only thing I can say is that come April the 19th, I will be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
Evander, you got it, bud. Lou, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Coach.
And please, do come back. It's always great to talk to you.
We're ready.
You got it. We'll be right back, and tonight got a full night for you. Stay up late.
Into the Night, starring Rick Dees. Brought to you by Kellogg's, the best to you each morning.
I'm Tom West with CNN Headline Sports. And a clash of styles takes place in Atlantic City tonight when 42-year-old George Foreman tries to become the oldest man to win the World Heavyweight Boxing title. The former champion, whose training table probably resembles the finest banquet spread a fancy hotel can offer, weighed in at 257 pounds Wednesday night, dwarfing the current champion Evander Holyfield. The real deal, as he's called, came in at a svelte 208. The 28-year-old Holyfield is a master of the bodybuilding approach, having used weights to finely tune his body to a degree never seen out of any previous boxer. While the differences in age, weight, and style are obvious, the two gladiators seem to carry a similar philosophy.
Well, one thing about it, I've been heavyweight champ of the world, gotten the joy of it, and I also I've lost the whole thing, so nothing is new to me. I know one thing, you don't prepare to lose. That happens. If it happens, hey, it's not going to happen unless you didn't do your best. And that's what losing is all about, if you don't do your best.
My victory is to go out and do the best I possibly can. And whatever way that this decision flops, I'm a winner.
Away now, but that did not stop the challenger from speaking his mind today with Charlie Steiner.
Thanks, Bill, and welcome to the Atlantic City Convention Center, where in about 4 hours, George Foreman and Evander Holyfield will step into the ring behind me for the heavyweight championship of the world. Of course, it's been one of the most unusual promotions in boxing history, so much so that 2 nights ago, Holyfield and Foreman sat together for an interview with us, so much so that even George Foreman, on the very day of the fight, granted one last interview to us on ESPN exclusively.
I sit back and sometimes you want to be nervous or you want to be edgy, but then you think, hey, man, I've campaigned for this moment. So you get happy again. You get happy. You're happy that you're in this position. You're happy that the cameras are really on you. This is what it's all about.
Are you nervous? I mean, are the butterflies now there? Is the game face finally on?
I don't know. The game face, it's just going to happen in the ring. It's no good to you until you get in the ring in the first place. I haven't had a good breakfast yet, but as soon as I eat, I think the game face is going to disappear again. I'm happy. This is a happy moment for me, a happy day for me, a historical moment for boxers in general. So all I can do is kind of be happy about it.
How do you get mentally strong and focused and prepared?
Well, you get in good shape before you get into Atlantic City. You travel all over the country in the West Indies, hot weather, running the mountains. You get back into Marshall and you chop wood and you do a lot of road work, you pull cars. By the time you get here, it's all about publicity. And the wind down into publicity, your body's already in good shape. You focus, you know what you got to do.
So the sparring sessions you had for the public were as much show as much as anything?
It was all about show because all the hard work was over. Every now and then I'd practice something that I'm really going to try to execute in the fight, but not a whole lot.
So in many ways, I think you may have pulled the wool over the eyes of a lot of the media who were saying, well, look at George and his workouts. He's not doing anything, but you knew fairly well all along what you were doing.
Yeah, because what I do anyway truly is knock people out. And I can't practice that every day anyway.
Joe Frazier weighed, I think, 208 pounds, which is exactly what Evander Holyfield weighs. Are there similarities between Frazier in terms of how you're going to fight a somewhat smaller man, although Evander and you are, in terms of height, they don't, that surprised me somewhat that there wasn't that much difference. But is there a similarity between the two of them?
Not really. I think you're going to see a taller guy who's going to fight differently than a guy who was, Frazier, of course, short. His weight were all in his bottom of his legs, so you have to worry about his hooks and the power from the lower part of his body. Evander's a boxer, puncher type fella, so it's altogether different this time.
What about his quickness? Is that something, as a 42-year-old man who may not be quite as quick as he was when he was 25 or 26 years old, is the quickness of Holyfield something that bothers you, or is that something that you'll deal with, or you still have to knock him out anyway?
Well, if a guy is quick, it's because nature's given it to him to protect himself.
Is there a fear, because so much has been made of your age, of just having a bad night, and then people are going to say, see, the whole thing was just a...
You'd be surprised. There's no fear with me because people have watched me almost 4 years. I've had as many boxing matches as Evander Holyfield has had in the last, what, 7 years. So they know me. I've gotten out there. Everything that you can see, you've seen already with me. So the greatest thing has already happened. I'm participating. I'm competing. And I'm showing the whole world you can do it. And past 40, it's happening. I'm a winner already.
George Foreman's final words just a few hours before tonight's fight. Joining us now, ESPN boxing analyst Ray Leonard and Al Bernstein. You've been through the big fight routine many times before. You don't be talking to people like me the day of the fight, do you?
No, I don't, Charlie. In fact, it's uncharacteristic for any fighter to talk to reporters prior to the fight, so close to a fight. Because what he should be doing is actually resting and focusing, concentrating on tonight.
Al, what do you make of all that?
Well, it's amazing to me. George Foreman wandered down to the press room about 11 o'clock this morning and went up to the podium at the microphone and said, now, I will not answer any more questions, so please don't ask me. Of course, they asked him 100 questions, he answered all of them.
One of the big controversies in Las Vegas during the Tyson-Ruddock fight, or toward the end of the Tyson-Ruddock fight more correctly, was a stoppage by Richard Steele. Rudy Battle will be the referee tonight, and in lieu of George Foreman's age and the controversy that Richard Steele went through, what can we expect from Rudy Battle tonight?
Well, Rudy Battle is a competent referee, but I think people are very concerned about George Foreman's age. That's a factor, so we don't know what the reaction is going to be with Rudy Battle.
What do we know about Rudy Battle?
Well, I think Rudy is a very competent middle-of-the-road referee, and by that I mean he's been involved in very few controversies. But a key thing to remember is that here in New Jersey, normally, bouts are stopped quicker than almost in any other state, Richard Steele's stoppage of the Tyson-Ruddock fight notwithstanding. So you could see a quicker stoppage in New Jersey than you might expect.
We will find out in about 4 hours. For now, let's go back to Sports Center.
Like Evander Holyfield. I like Evander based on youth alone, and then the fact that he's a very agile fighter.
I think Holyfield, rather easily, 3-4 rounds. I'm not real sure about that. It may go to 7 rounds if Foreman has more than I think he has.
I think that Holyfield will beat George Foreman up one way or another.
You know, I honestly can't see Evander Holyfield being bothered at all. I'd be very surprised if it goes 5 rounds.
Nearly everybody in the press room is picking Evander Holyfield, saying he is younger and he is fitter. And one of the reasons he is fitter is the team he has put together to make him that way. This is the boxing laboratory, where the test tubes are the speed bags, and the heavy bag, and the shadow boxing. This is the way it's always been done, until Evander Holyfield came along. Holyfield is his own boxing laboratory. The world's heavyweight champion prepares for a fight like no other boxer in the game. Holyfield is the high-tech heavyweight who puts in a 5-day work week. He starts early, works late, and in between he stretches, he is stretched, he runs, works in the gym, spars, and lifts weights.
I let everybody know that everything is surrounding the boxing. And I have a very difficult time in boxing practice. Everybody knows that at any given time their workout might be canceled. You know, like tomorrow, I do 8 rounds. If the 8 rounds is very difficult and it takes a lot out of me, then on the conditioning, I don't need conditioning because I had enough conditioning with the workout.
Boxing is not a team sport, but Holyfield's unblemished record is the product of a team effort. The heavyweight champion has more trainers, coaches, and assistants than most basketball teams.
My job is just to box, teach, you know. And the physical trainer takes care of the conditioning. But I have a say in that.
If George has a lot of work to do one day, then I may back him off that night. If I know he's going hard on Saturday, I may back him off. If I know that Thursday's day off, I may push him hard. I find out from Chaz what days they're going to work the legs. So it's like a puzzle, and we're fitting together better every single camp.
But it is Holyfield who has the final say in everything.
If I want to get stronger, and you know, running ain't gonna help me towards punching power or anything like that, then what can I do like that? And you get someone that's a specialist in the program that know what they're doing, and you trying to let them know everything is to enhance the boxing. I don't want to shorten my reach up by getting too bucky, you know, and that's when the flexibility coach come in to stretch you out and make sure that you're not getting too bucky, and then you can utilize the power that you have gained.
Strong set, 3, look real good, 4, yeah, 5, big triceps, 6, big triceps, 7, one more, get 8, good shot.
Holyfield's high-tech preparations clearly make him a better conditioned athlete. And, most importantly, it makes him a more confident one.
He never questioned whether he can go the distance. That's not even a fear of his. And I think there's a lot of fighters out there with a lot of skill that question what's going to happen to me after the 5th round if I can't take this guy out.
What do you get out of it that the other guys who don't do it get?
I feel that I get confidence out of it.
There is no question about the fitness of Evander Holyfield, even though he gives away 49 pounds going into tonight's fight. The moment of reckoning has arrived. Ray Leonard, how do you see tonight's fight, and who do you think is going to win?
Well, I'm going with Evander Holyfield. I think he's going to be a little bit too much for George Foreman at the pace he should be able to carry. But one thing about it, George will be very economical, slower, but trying to land that one big punch. So George will be searching while Evander Holyfield will be working the body.
Al Bernstein?
I have to echo Ray's sentiments. I go with Holyfield in the 7th or 8th round, probably by TKO, after he has made George Foreman move and look for him for about 5 or 6 rounds. But don't be surprised if Foreman does something very good early in this fight and Holyfield still gets through it.
It's a unanimous decision from the 3 of us, but you can throw out that whole scenario if George lands one good shot to the snoot of Evander Holyfield. We will be back immediately after the fight. We'll interrupt the Dodger-Padre game with all the post-fight action here at the Convention Center in Atlantic City. For now, let's go back to Sports Center.
HBO presents World Championship Boxing. For the first time on TV, Holyfield and Foreman's greatest hit. That's right. If you tune into HBO's coverage of the Holyfield-Foreman title fight, not only will you see boxing excitement, but you can talk to both fighters live for 1/2 hour just by calling 1-800-UPPERCUT. Talk to Evander and George live. To take advantage of this amazing TV offer, call 1-800-UPPERCUT. But don't call now. Wait till you see the fight on HBO. That's 1-800-UPPERCUT. Members of George Foreman and Evander Holyfield families are not...